As builders, we have the ability to build a home in our head. On today's episode, we talk about what to expect when you're expecting
a house. So Tim always says that we don't like surprises, and our hunch is neither do you. So with this podcast, we're going to walk through the phases of construction and what to expect with each one.
Yeah, let's just start right off the bat. A lot of people think construction, the beginning of it is building the house, but there's actually a lot of prep work that goes into before you start building. So let's talk a little bit about perhaps there's demo involved, perhaps there's not. If it's a clean lot, you still have to, at least in the city of Austin, there's a lot of environmental protections that have to go into place, right. Tree protection, maybe brush clearing, things like that. So what do we want to talk about specifically in that phase?
Well, I think one thing that is really interesting is it feels really exciting because you're like, oh, I've got stuff and we're ready to get started. And it's like, what's that phrase? Like hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that because you've got to get all the environmental controls in place. And sometimes it's like, oh, we're going to get the foundation in, but there's a lot of just site work and stuff that needs to happen.
Yeah.
People consider the foundation as the beginning of construction, but site prep and site conditioning is like masking off surfaces before you paint. The beauty of
part.
Because the beauty of the work is the hardest part, and that's getting ready for the hard work by prepping properly. And that's what site prep is. It's, as Daniel said, protecting all the things that we don't want to damage. It's accommodating runoff so that we don't damage adjacent water streams. A lot of things that it takes before the foundation guy can actually begin to place forms and start the foundation.
Yeah, and so there's things like securing the job site with a fence. We've got to provide water for the construction. So either putting in a temporary tap for that or capping off something that's there. And then also electrical, we put in a temporary pole. And then with all of these things, City of Austin has a number of what's called pre-construction inspections. So there's a series of inspections that happen before you even start construction. So like you said, the hurry up and wait, it's very true. Like day one is really day -20.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way to look at it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I would say kind of in a weird opposite way, if there is some amount of demo to be done, that's usually fairly fast unless we've got to do something really careful.
Yeah.
But that quick demo with all of the slow stuff can make the slow stuff feel even slower.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
And among all this, we all recognize that construction and the onset of construction is a messy operation for the neighborhood, and the neighbors were impacted. Notifying the neighbors, setting their expectations about the noise and the debris and the traffic and everything, along with us managing those things well, is important. I think that's the most vulnerable period when we start construction because we are not protected from the weather at all. So we also have to accommodate weather events and allow for those.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we've made it through site prep, and then the actual construction begins, so to speak. Foundation, that's the next phase. It's not just go in there, put up some forms, pour some concrete, and then move on. What are the considerations and things that we need to expect there?
Well, there's a lot of inspections, a lot of surveys, a lot of measuring, a number of things that are required to get the footprint of the house exactly where it's planned for on the site plan.
Right. It's really important that the building setbacks are adhered to, that the site plan that was drawn and approved matches the actual lot itself, because sometimes there are discrepancies there as well.
Right.
It's actually kind of impressive to me when you think about it, because it's one thing to think about drawing it on paper, but to go on site and locate where everything needs to be, there's a lot of planning involved in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where the art of surveying becomes very interesting. People don't really think of the precision involved in locating specific property boundaries to the 16th of an inch.
Yeah.
Over a 200-foot span is almost miraculous
Yeah.
if you think about it. A lot of it's done by GPS now. We go through that process and we get it laid out and we have it verified, we have it inspected. Takes a while. One of the biggest comments I hear people make, clients, is that, wow, it sure seems small. And generally, when you have an open space, an open set of forms in a huge lot, it does, relatively speaking, look small. Foundation footprints are generally no more than 10 to 20% of the overall lot size. And so it can look small until it gets
And even if you
framed.
know that that is something to be expected, there's definitely been times in the past where I've stepped into like a site and thought, did I make a mistake here? Is this does this need to be a little bit bigger?
Yeah.
And I actually had a client once that we did an addition for the primary suite and then a remodel of the rest of the house. And once that area was all formed up, we met on site because they were concerned. And we walked the site and like walked out where their bed would be and really had to kind of imagine it before they felt comfortable. Oh yeah, this is going to be fine.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'd like to also speak a little bit. I know that this could go lots of different ways, but we're really speaking to kind of the custom work that we do here.
Sure.
And in City of Austin, sometimes foundations are really complex and we've got drilled piers, we've got different layers. And so sometimes the foundation can take a very long time. And so we try to set that expectation. We build out our timeline beforehand. But, we've had projects where the foundation alone has taken over a year. It's not usual, but it does happen sometimes. And I think the expectation of, quickly get the foundation and move on really has to be understood that sometimes those foundations can take months and months.
Yeah.
And then you get to build the house.
And it's hard because you don't see, it doesn't feel like a lot of progress, especially coming right after if you were to demo a house and it's gone and it's really exciting and, lots of stuff is moving. And then all of a sudden, everything's just basically at ground level or below and you can't really see progress sometimes.
Right. I do want to go back and point out one thing that you indicated, and that is that when we're placing the foundation design is based on testing done by a geotechnical engineer during the design process.
Right.
But they only take tests in 2, maybe 3 spots on the property so that the structural engineer can then determine what foundation is best suited for that lot. When you're excavating and placing the foundation, you follow that plan, but every once in a while you discover that the soil conditions are slightly different than they assumed during that test, and you have to make some modifications.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on to the next phase, I think another thing that we should touch on is the foundation phase, the concrete phase is not just concrete.
Yeah, I was
right?
about to.
So we've got other subcontractors that have to do work as well, the electrician and the plumber, namely, sometimes also the HVAC contractor. So there is a lot of stuff that lives within that concrete and a lot of decisions that have to be solidified
Yep.
before the concrete does.
Yeah.
What are those considerations?
Well, island locations, since there's no adjacent wall, the only way to get power or plumbing there is to put it in the foundation. Same thing with most plumbing fixtures that are out in the floor of the first floor, those rough ends, as they call them, the drain pipes, sometimes the water pipes, are run through the foundation and then stubbed up behind the fixture that they go to.
Mm-hmm. And floor plugs.
And floor
Right.
plugs, yeah. And then something I think that is often seems like a decision that needs to be way, way down in the future is something like if you have a tub filler that's floor mounted,
Yeah.
that has to be accounted for and located exactly. So the decision of what that unit is going to be, if you don't want to make changes later in the concrete, has to be determined before you pour that concrete.
And tub drains. And shower drains. Or is it a slot drain that's located in the corner of the shower? Is it a center drain? A lot of considerations, hopefully done during the design.
Yeah.
And if there are any like small level changes to account for flooring or
Yeah, that's right.
recessing different things.
Yeah, knowing your floor thicknesses, finished floor thicknesses, and all right. So let's assume now we've finished our concrete; it's been placed. Next phase is what? So it's either structural steel or framing or both sort of together. And that's, I mean, now you're building the house, I feel like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it begins to take shape and get three-dimensional. People get excited about it, and they can, at some point, start walking through it and envision how the rooms flow and how they feel. Again, the house is going to change size because it's all relative to what you see and the environment it's sitting in. It may look small as a foundation, but then you frame it and it looks bigger because you can see through the walls, and the room you're standing in is sort of shared by the adjacent rooms.
Yeah.
So
lots of natural light, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's different perception. A lot going on. The framing has the skeleton, the sheathing, the decking, the structural members, the beams to create that shape and make it structurally sound. And then you got to dry it in, what we call drying it in, which is a weatherization process with membranes and flashings and tapes and sealants.
Yeah. I think one thing that, often comes up, because that framing stage can take some time as well. And, often before you're dried in, you get lots of rain or there's different weather events. And there's a fear from the client that, oh no, this is all getting wet. It's okay as long as we manage it properly, right? So if wood does get wet, as long as it dries out, it's okay. So managing sort of the moisture levels of the wood as we're going through construction and not closing in things that are damp or wet is a consideration, but there's no need to like panic if your house is getting rained on before it gets dried in.
Yeah, I think there's always this pressure on the builder to get through this phase as efficiently as you can so that you can dry it in. And once it is dried in, all those components, the lumber comes to us wet. It was transported, got wet. It was stored, it got wet. It was cut down green, it was wet. So it really starts to dry after it comes out of the mill and gets placed in the house. Once it's dried in and is no longer exposed to bulk water,
Right.
now over a period of time, it dries out.
Yeah.
And it begins to shrink.
Yeah. Begins to shrink as well. But that's not to say that we shouldn't look carefully at the lumber and the state of the lumber. And
Sure.
occasionally there are things that don't work well, whether it's any sort of mold or disfiguration or anything that needs to be swapped out. But it's all open up so we can see it at that point.
Yeah, we had a project back in the 90s where we had 6 weeks of rain.
Oh,
It's
wow.
almost continuous, and the studs started to turn color, black.
Oh, wow.
And the client was a pathologist, and he formulated a mixture of chemicals, mainly bleach, that we had to spray all of the lumber with.
Yeah.
And then abrade it with brushes.
Yeah.
And then let it dry out before we could encapsulate.
Yeah. There's a process of that now that's more commercial. But yeah. Interesting. Okay. And so let's say, so we get through dry in, the weatherization, as you say. So dry in means we've got sheathing on the outside of the house. We've got decking on the roof. So it looks like you can see the shape of the house. And then we begin to put in windows, and we put in our underlayment on our roof deck and our WRB, our weather resistant barrier on the outside of the house. It's a lot of flashing and things that happen there. But that's, I think, at the point when you can most feel like that the house is the shape that it's going to be and really get to understand it. But then the inside is still wide open because you can see through all the walls.
Right.
So once that's completed, and with all of these phases, there's some overlap.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not stop and start. There's always a bit of everything happening. And that allows us to keep an efficient timeline. And we don't want guys getting in each other's way. So we manage that, but we do try to be as efficient as we can and get work done.
That's a good, broad expectation for people to be able to understand that, sequencing and who's there when. There's a lot of just planning and insight that has to happen on who's there when and in what order.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, trades would love to have the entire project to themselves for the duration of their phase of work. It's not practical. I don't know that anyone really attempts to do that or should. houses would take 5 years to build. So there is overlap, as you say, and
Yeah.
everyone needs
balance.
to work together. There's actually a benefit to working together because so many of these things that we do and integrate into the house work together. They're integrated into systems. Mechanical systems and electrical systems and plumbing systems are now all integrated together, and those contractors have to communicate, collaborate on the best way to connect them all.
Yeah. Once house is framed, then what we call mechanical trades come in. So the electrician, the plumber, typically we do plumber first and then mechanical and then electrician.
Right.
Why is that? Just that seems like an interesting thing to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. I think plumber comes in first because he has specific locations and he has things that go from basically the slab up through the roof and only specific pathways that he can use.
Water only flows downhill.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless you have a pump.
Let's have fun. That's right. And then bring in the mechanical after that because it's a lot of duct work. And then electrician finally because his wires are the smallest and can be routed the most easily, I would say.
Yeah.
Is that right? Would you?
Did he say that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But there is, again, some overlap. We've got lighting layouts. And so unless it is drawn specifically and we know where everything is going, sometimes we come in and we put in all those fixtures in the ceiling so that we know we can't run a duct through a specific
And the
spot,
more
things
unique
like that.
the home design is, and the more critical it is to have visual components placed specifically where they're designed, the more critical it is for this overlap to happen. You might have a plumber come in first, but you might want the electrician to come locate all of his exposed light fixture locations so that the plumber doesn't interfere with that.
Yeah.
And then the electrician might leave for a little while and then come back once the plumber's a little further along. Same thing with the ductwork. You want to make sure that the major components of the duct distribution system are thought through before the electrician or the plumber interfere or place something there that would be in the way. So there is a lot of communication and collaboration that has to happen.
Yeah, it is helpful. We have sort of these collaborative meetings on site where everyone can kind of get together and talk through the different pinch points, as it were. But I think you touched on something that, as far as expectations for the client go, are very important. And that's that in this phase, particularly, a particular trade doesn't show up, do all of their work, and then leave. Oftentimes they show up for some amount of time, do some amount of work, leave while somebody else comes in and does something in that area, and then they come back. So there is some gaps in between, and we account for that in our broader schedule. But I think it can sometimes be frustrating when the client's like, well, the electrician was here last week, but he's not here this week.
Yeah.
What's going on? And it's just part of the sequencing and how we have to do things.
Yeah.
And sometimes the design professionals or the client want to come in and spot check locations to verify those locations are, in fact, where they are most suited for. Switches, plugs, they might want to add plugs, they may want to move switches, they may want to determine something that was different than was in the design, like where you control 2 or 3 different light circuits from. Maybe the electrician has to come temporarily place those things and then let the design professionals decide, that looks good, or no, let's move it over here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a more efficient way of doing it than doing all the work and then having them come in and decide, maybe I don't like this or whatever. And then you have to redo a lot of stuff. So you're not pulling wires to those boxes. You're just placing them once they've all been signed off on. Some people call it the blue box walk. Yeah, box walk. What do they call it? Blue? Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds right.
It sounds right. And so at the end of this phase, what we have then is a house that's framed in, that has a bunch of wires. It has a bunch of ductwork and a bunch of pipes everywhere.
All systems.
All systems, except I guess we didn't talk about the low voltage contractor.
That's true.
So they usually come in, well, it kind of depends who we're working with at what phase, whether it's before or after the electrician. But those are all low voltage wires. Low voltage wires don't play well with high voltage wires. So the routing of all of those things is important.
Right. And just for reference, that's the networking for internet connectivity. It's the security system, cameras. It's the televisions. It's the audio equipment. It's all those things that are controlled by a separate contractor.
Yeah. And I just want to jump back something that I wanted to speak about that I didn't with the plumber, knowing what fixtures you're putting in. This is the phase where the rough valves go in the wall. So your shower valve that you touch and feel inside of your shower, there's a component of that inside of the wall.
That's a really good point.
And it is specific to that fixture. So that selection has to have been made in advance so that part can be ordered and delivered on site and installed. And in addition to that, you kind of have to know exactly where it goes. And you have to know
and what's going over it.
Yeah, how thick your wall is going to be, the tile that goes on that wall. So all of that stuff needs to be figured out before this phase.
Yeah.
So you're not having to change things or open up walls and move stuff around later.
Right.
And that's those designs, shower walls, tub walls, backsplashes, generally are part of the design process, either by the architect or interior designer, specifically laid out with the tile sizes, the locations of all the fixtures, valves, niches, shower doors, glass, all those things have to be decided really before we get too far along in the framing.
Yeah, no, that's right. And we don't throw these decisions onto the clients. We have a selection schedule that's pre-planned.
Yeah.
So we know, when
Stay ahead of
all of this stuff. Occasionally you've got issues where something's back ordered or there's a tile that takes 16 weeks to know, and so they maybe decide not to use it.
One other thing that's kind of related is like blocking. If we're going to put it in the walls, now need to consider for certain things that require, even like if you're going to put in like towel bars and don't want them,
or now even television brackets. Everything nowadays that mounts to the wall needs to have some kind of wall support.
Yeah,
I do want to get Chelsea's feedback on that design component of laying out locations of particular, whether it's hardware, plumbing fixtures, light fixtures, not just showing them on a plan view or floor plan, but actually elevations, interior elevations. We always see cabinet elevations. Sometimes we have light fixture locations or plumbing fixture locations specified on there. But over the years, when we have a project that has less detail, the default has always been to let the builder and subcontractor decide what's standard operating procedure, like a sconce, for example, with a 9-foot ceiling would probably place that sconce at 6 foot high, something like that. Well, that doesn't always apply.
not if I have to say anything about it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that
is such a good point, I think, for owners and design teams to keep in mind that if you don't tell us where it goes, like I think we do a good job of asking.
Yeah.
But you could show up on site and someone's already placed it, and you don't want to have to ever undo something. It's just inefficient.
Yeah, and this goes back to one of our fundamental values, which is constant communication.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have the electrician on site and he has to place a wall sconce and doesn't have the information for it, he knows to ask us,
right?
What do I do with this? And we either have the answer or know how to get the answer.
Yeah, a recent project that I was working on, we walked the whole house with the interior designer and the electrician and confirmed placement. And as we were doing it, he was taking notes and we were writing notes and sticking them on the wall. So it was very clear.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes clients and design professionals can get overwhelmed if we ask them to come during the rough-in process, because there's so many decisions, so much to take in, that maybe what we historically have worked ourselves to do is choose a week, and on this week we're going to do an electrical walk, and we'll look at all the electrical placements and all the fixture placements and make sure that they're acceptable to the team. And then the next week maybe we'll do the plumbing. Same thing with all the plumbing fixtures. And then finally, the following week or 2 weeks later, we look at where all the air conditioning registers are, the thermostat locations, and just make sure everyone's all right with it.
And something on those, it's like just like a little detail that I think is really helpful is when we do walk the site with the electrician, for instance, they're so familiar with the code that they can say, hey, wait, you can't mount it here because of XYZ. It needs to be this number of inches.
Yeah.
And it's stuff that, as for me, it's hard to keep track with plumbing, electrical, every single thing. And it's nice to have the person who actually does it, who knows that.
Right. All right. Well, so I would say at the end of this phase here is like one of the biggest milestones in construction, because this is the point where you finish putting stuff in the walls. First, after we do all this, we add the insulation, and that can come in a bunch of different forms. But once the insulation is done, before installation, there's lots and lots of inspections that have to happen, because that's sort of your last opportunity to see inside the walls, right? And what we do is we photo document all of this with a, 3D documentation system, so that we can in the future look back and see everything that's in the walls and know where things are placed. But at the end of this milestone, that's when we do drywall. And drywall is one of those ones where, like we've kind of spoken about today already, seems big, seems small, seems big, seems small. When you put the drywall up, I mean, I feel like everyone has a different reaction, but there's always a reaction.
Yeah.
It's either, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger, or oh my gosh, like, did I do something wrong here? This is way too small.
I feel like often it feels, not always, it must depend. It has to have something, if I think about it, it's probably something to do with like the proportion of the space and how much natural light it gets.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can feel significantly smaller because suddenly you can't see through to the other room.
Yeah. I think one of the big things is the ceiling.
Yeah.
Because before that point, it feels really tall because you can see all the way up to the bottom of the roof deck. But when the drywall goes on, all of a sudden it's like, oh, is that like, it could be a 10-foot ceiling and it could feel low compared to how it did before.
Each space becomes a room.
Yeah.
That's right.
But so the expectations there are just to understand that whatever you walk in and experience in that moment is not necessarily the experience you'll have when you're living there and it's furnished and finished, right? Yeah. And so let's see, what other kinds of things do we have at this stage? So this is where we put up the drywall and we begin to finish out the inside. So we're putting in cabinets, we're doing tile work, flooring, all of these different things. And there's this phase to me takes a very long time because there's a lot of different people involved. And it's also meticulous work. So it's not something that you rush through necessarily.
Right.
And like with the mechanical trades come and go because maybe they do a certain portion of their finished area and then somebody has to come put cabinets in and then they come back and they do another portion, whether that's tile work or glass or whatever else. And so there is a lot of coming and going of people and sequencing and working in one room and not the other and moving around. And there's just always a lot going on.
Right.
Yeah, and it can feel, I think, sometimes frustrating maybe if you're excited to see a particular space and someone's working over here and you're like, oh, they're about to get to it. But then they can't work on that right now because someone else is working there. So they're out at a different job. And it feels, I don't know, it's always, I think clients often have like, yeah.
Well, I think too, I mean, there is some of that, culturally we've had these television shows where there's this sort of like reveal moment, right? Where there's all this hustle and bustle and then one day you walk in and the house is finished. But that's just not reality, right? It's especially with our clients, that are there on a weekly or semi-weekly basis, the changes are incremental and they're along for the ride the whole way. So there's never a big reveal. And I think maybe, that can be a little bit dissatisfying. Probably.
And if you think about how quickly, framing always moves really quickly. And then getting the gypboard up on the walls and ceiling is fairly quick, I think.
Yeah.
So you're always comparing things to what came before. And so once that quick thing happens and it feels so different all of a sudden, you kind of want to see all the I want to see all the tile in. I want to see all the cabinets in.
Clients sometimes want to come every day and check progress every day. And I think that speaks to what you're saying, that sometimes things go so slow that it's like, well, what did you get done today? Well, we did a lot of planning work. We had to go get a lot of material or a lot of reasons why. And at any given day, a lot of progress may not be made. But if once a week you look at it, it's obvious that, oh, wow, okay, I can see substantial progress.
Yeah.
I almost want to divide this section or phase of the work into two different parts because I've always viewed this as like drywall And then all the trim, doors, and cabinets, which is really all the woodwork that has to go in, and then the painting to finish all of that. But once that painting is done, or at least substantially complete, you begin to see all the countertops, tiles, and then all the fixtures start to go in. And they can almost, it's like during the, what we call the rough-in phase, where everybody's kind of working together. Same thing.
Yeah.
You kind of get everybody back in there, putting in faucets, toilets, light fixtures, hardware. And now the house really looks like the jewelry is on.
I should mention too that, something that's really important to us is protecting finishes.
Yeah.
Right. And so, up until this point, it's been a real job site, and it's not dirty, but it's rough. And this is the phase where it starts to go from being a job site to a house, and we still have people working there. So we've got to protect floors. We have to protect cabinets, all these different things. And so that too can be a little disappointing when
really
you
can.
don't actually get to see your cabinets because they're covered up with protection. As soon as they go in, we protect them. And then you've got to wait some more before you can see them. But it's a really important part of the job is to protect all these things so that we don't have to go back and make repairs later.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We even have one of the clients on one of our projects. I went through the house right after countertops were installed and took photos of everything because I knew we were going to cover them up, and she wanted to see them and came by. I think it was later the same day. We already had them.
Too late.
It was too late, and I was sending her pictures, and we kind of like peeked on some of them. But it really is. It does feel, but even for me, because I want to see the nice stuff. But it's really good that we cover it immediately.
Yeah.
And we clean it several times during that process so that we can
That's right.
make sure we can see all the surfaces.
No, the drywall dust. Yeah.
Drywall is like one of my least favorite things, honestly, because it's just so dusty and like, I don't know.
But it can be like, we do level 5 finishes a lot. And like you said, it goes up quickly. Like they can hang it several days.
Yeah, the hanging is one thing.
And then it could take several weeks before it's actually finished. And that's just guys in there sanding and mudding and sanding and mudding. And
that's hard, I think, because it doesn't look that much different. You're like,
no, that is one of the ones where they come in like, well, what did you guys do? Well, we sanded and recoated that 3 times, but you can't see that.
Yeah, drywall is one of those things that it's got inserted into the industry a long, long time ago, and it's hard to get away from. As messy as it is, and as fragile as it can be, it does provide a great degree of fire protection. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard to replace it. We've often talked internally that we would love to get away from drywall for those reasons and just do nothing but some version of paneling in every room. And hopefully we get the opportunity to do that in some of our projects. But I don't see drywall going away anytime soon.
Yeah. Speaking of transitioning from a construction site to a finished home, this is kind of where we are, right? We get to that finish point where we're able to peel back all that protection. We require anybody walking into the house to wear booties, right?
Or this phase also. It's like so nice. Like we pull everything up and suddenly, I was just talking to Luke about this not too long ago, one of our PMs on a site. We were like, oh, I'm so excited to get this floor protection up because instantly you've been working in this thing that's like covered in, feels like, I don't know, just like cardboard almost.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it gets peeled up and it's like, oh yeah, we did all this work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you get to see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah.
But it's not done.
Yeah.
Right? No. Like it feels done. You could walk into the house and be like, oh, it's finished, but it's definitely not. There's still so many things that have to be done. And that, last 5% can feel like it takes forever. An eternity, right? Because the perception is that it's finished. But in order for it to, be up to our standards, there's a lot of little bits and pieces that have to be tweaked and finished and redone. But in addition to that, all of these systems that you spoke about, they've got to be commissioned. They don't just automatically work, right? What goes into that?
Well, in our world, and I think many people understand this, there are 2 points near the end of the project that have different names. One is substantial completion. And substantial completion is when you've put in all those fixtures and finishes and systems and you've turned on the water and you get your inspections on all those things, utilities get turned on. Now we can test it all and make sure that it works right? So But if we verify that it works right, it's substantially complete, which effectively means it could be occupied. It's safe enough and functional enough that it could be occupied. But there's so many things that are unfinished or uncoordinated or need final adjustment or commissioning, as we call it. And that generally takes 30 to 60 days to do that.
Yeah.
That's a period of just detailing everything that needs to be coordinated.
It's a good way to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with that, it gives our project managers and the architect and the client, everyone time to sort of walk through. And if there are any small tweaks or changes or things that inevitably happen, that is just part of the process. I mean, this is a custom home, and often we're trying things that haven't been done before. So, we're building a hidden door that maybe doesn't function exactly like we'd like it to, and so it needs to be tweaked a little bit or adjusted, and fine-tuned, I guess is a good word to use. And this is when all of that stuff happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And when we get to the point where all that comes together and we think that the house is actually ready for move-in, we call that complete or finished.
Yeah. And with all of that at the end, there is a series of inspections that have to take place.
Right.
Those inspections have to go in a certain sequence according to the city. And that sometimes can be frustrating because you can't change that sequence necessarily. And there are sort of time periods where you aren't able to do work. So, for example, let's say you get your final electrical inspection and you can't order your meter can or your hookup to your house until you have that final inspection. Well, then you're waiting on the utility contractor, the utility to come connect that, and you're on their schedule. You can't affect that.
And they say generally 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
So
right.
You're right. You could sit there for 2 weeks and you're ready for utilities to turn on the lights and test all the equipment, but you can't do it because you don't have power.
Yeah. And that's not to say that, I mean, we know this is the case and we build that into our schedule, but it is always hard for the client to be like, what's happening now?
Right.
And it's frustrating, I think, when it's like some of these things we have more control over, but when you're waiting on something from the city, it's like, I can't just call and I don't know these people personally,
right?
Like we do some of our trades.
Yeah. Exactly. But there's, there's there's water connections. These are all things that sort of happen in this phase as well. Before, we can even commission the air conditioners. And we do have, certain ways that we can temporary power things to test them out. But that gets a little tricky. And I guess something that we sort of maybe skipped over is landscaping. The inside of the house going from construction site to home, that also happens on the outside as well.
Right.
And, this is several months before where we are now, but that's an exciting phase as well, where we're scraping the lot, we're cleaning all the construction debris, and then creating a new mess when we're trenching for irrigation and doing, undoing all this work again. Those are all sort of coordinated with us and driveways and things like that.
5 to 6 months to complete all the site work. And you don't want to get it done too early in the project because it gets destroyed by all the equipment moving around, the traffic, foot traffic, and activity that goes around the outside of the house. So until you get the outside cladding and finishes done on the house, you really can't start much in the way of site work.
That's right. Yeah. You don't want to be setting up scaffolding on fresh sod or flower beds or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I think that you get really excited when you see the house becoming more and more complete, but in reality, we have to wait for certain things, or even with landscaping, even if you get the plants in immediately, it really is not going to look like it should for another year maybe or 2 years after plants kind of fill in and do their thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of patience, I think, involved. And something you said earlier, Daniel, makes me think, when you give your 2 weeks notice somewhere and then suddenly you're like, oh, I don't want to be here. I've already told them I want to, I'm quitting. I'm not going to be here.
Yeah.
And I think that 2 weeks can feel like an eternity. And I think the same is true when we get to a certain point with the house. Yeah. Stuff starts to feel like it's just dragging on sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had that experience leaving a job. I've been doing this too long. Before we move on to client move-in, I want to go back and point out one thing that we do that I think is becoming accepted by the rest of the builder community, and that is we talked about how lumber comes to us damp, and we put it in a house and we cover it and we get to dry it by not letting bulk water get to it. But there's still a lot of moisture content in all the finishes and the materials that we use. And so we like to condition the inside of the house with temporary equipment during construction, which helps
Stabilize
everything find its ultimate position and stabilize to dimensionally stable position so that cracking is kept to a minimum and movement, door alignment is controlled. And so I think that's something that the construction of the residential home building industry will adopt across the board eventually.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great. I think this is a really, for clients and homeowners specifically, a very informative episode because, like we've talked about before, a lot of our clients haven't done this before, so it's new to them. I'd be curious to know what we missed, what questions
Probably a
people
lot,
have,
yeah.
right? So maybe leave in the comments what it is that we didn't talk about that you want to hear about.
I suspect that clients will want to know more about how to download all the information that we know about how the systems operate and how to control them and how to manage repairs or adjustments that need to be made after they moved in, because ultimately no one's lived there 24/7 up to that date. And once they move in, they're going to experience things by living there that no one else could experience. And that's going to inform the team, oh, well, this needs to be adjusted. This thermostat needs to be adjusted, or this ERV needs to be adjusted, or these light fixtures need adjustment. Whatever. There's always additional adjustments that have to happen after the client moves in.
Yeah. So what we talked about today was really subphases of a larger phase, which is the construction phase. But what we have is 3 phases. We have pre-construction, we have construction, and then post-construction, which is what you're talking about now.
Right.
Which I think each one of those has their own series of expectations that go along with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Nice work, y'all. That's it for another episode of Work in Process. Thanks for listening. If you've got a question, a topic suggestion, or want to start a project with us, send an email to hello@risingerbuild.com.
You can also find us on Instagram at risingerbuild_ATX or on YouTube by searching Risinger Build. We'd love to hear from you.